Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, go by the name of King Von Jr. And of course, on behalf of the Victorious Ones podcast, and of course, of course, once again, I've been doing a series of NBA top tens. Excuse me, sorry about that. So anyway, I've been doing a series of NBA top tens, and in this edition, in this edition, I'm going to go into my top 10 small forwards of all time. And so, so for the most part, this list, was pretty clear cut. At the same time, sometimes one of the things I like to do is look at other lists and also like, kind of average out where each player ranks consistently, on a universal sort of scale, if you will. And I like to do my best to be consistent pertaining to, how I rank them, especially when it comes to, when it comes to like the overall list. And I'm going to come up with the top 75, not so much in a video form, but eventually I'm going to reveal my top 75. But anyway, I'm going to go into, of course, I'm going to go into my top 10 small forwards of all time. And, of course, my criteria obviously consists of, of course, in terms of not only, individual, skill and dominance, everything like that, but also look at your overall body of work, as far as accolades, whether it's championships, MVPs, things like that, your influence and, overall stamp on the game. And, like I said, and just what type of imprint, that you've ultimately left, in order to advance the game itself. So, of course, I don't want to sound like I'm just being redundant, but also, side note, also I'm gonna have, of course, my social media links are going to be in this description as well, and of course, make sure to follow make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Of course, my YouTube, is just my name, Von Virginia. But anyway, of course, with that being said, let's go into the countdown. At number 10, when you talk about the greatest small forwards, you cannot talk about the great small forwards without mentioning this guy. I know it's really tough it was really tough to do this ranking, and especially considering his individual resume, but because he had let's say shortcomings when it came to team accomplishments and even individual accolades. That's the reason why he is at this ranking. So none other than Mr. And Atlanta Hawks himself, the human highlight film, Dominique Wilkins. So with Dominique Wilkins, of course, his resume is as this. Of course, Dominique was a nine-time All-Star. He was an All NBA first team selection. There's also he's a one-time All NBA. He was a nine-time All-Star between '86 and '94. He's All NBA first team selection. '86, that was the year that he won the scoring title, and that was his first and only scoring title before Jordan took over and just ran the table, and the rest is history. Just left everybody in the dust. So anyway, he was All NBA first team selection, 1986, and so of course, he was a four-time All NBA second team selection from '87, '88, '91, '93. He was also All NBA third team selection between '89 and '94. Like I said, once again, he was a scoring champion in '86. He was a two-time slam dunk champion for in '85 and '90, and of course, just recently he was finally named to the All NBA 75th anniversary team, and of course, one of his claims to fame is that he's also a part of that over 25,000 point club. We scored over 26,668 points, and and the thing about it, the thing that got me about Dominique was just how criminal it was for him to be left off the top 50. Thankfully, the NBA repented and finally put him on the top 75 team. But even Dominique himself has said that there's no way you could score over 26,000 points just off of dunks alone. So now, of course, later on, eventually, he started to polish his game. Of course, after having that devastating injury, of course, like I said, after having that devastating injury during the 92 season, after he got like his 20,000th point, after that, he started to make adjustments and changes to his game. So he became more. By that point, he became more of a jump shooter, because of the fact that by that point he had lost his his initial explosiveness, and so so of course he had to play smarter versus versus playing harder and playing more aggressively. And so so of course with that being said, especially when it comes to when it comes to top players of the 80s, Dominique is one of those guys that that's sort of underrated, not appreciated as much. It's like on one end I want to say he's underrated, but on the other end, it's just like in the era that you played in, because of the fact that because of the fact that there was so many like larger shadows, namely the likes of Magic and Bird, Isaiah, Kareem, Dr. J, Jordan, guys like that. It's just like you can only go so far. And so, and so the thing is, Dominique, was a victim of, of poor circumstances, in other words, bad team, at least he was a victim of, of his teams, being outmatched, outplayed, what I mean? Especially when you look at the Eastern Conference, the fact that he was, the fact that his teams became victims, if not notches, on the belts of. Obviously, you look at, look at the Birds powerhouse Celtics. You look at, of course, like I said, starting off, starting off with the likes of, teams like the Celtics. You can even throw the 76ers in there, the Bad Boy Pistons, and ultimately, of course, ultimately, ultimately Jordan's Bulls. Like I say, when you look at the Celtics, the Sixers, the Pistons, and later on the Bulls, it was really hard to sort of break that, break that glass ceiling, if you will. And so so as a result, it's the reason why Dominique is where he is when it comes to conversations and things like that. But at the same time, he's a bona fide legend. He's certainly the symbol of the Atlanta Hawks. And of course, even later on, he's still involved with the Hawks organization. The fact that he's a commentator with them, I mean, speaks volumes. And so, so he means a lot to to that city, and they certainly appreciate him for that. Sorry about that. So of course at number nine, I'm going to have to go number nine on this list. I'm going to have to go with Rick Barry, and so so of course Rick's resume is this: he was NBA champion in 1975. Which was the last time the Warriors had won a championship before the Steph Curry era. So it took 40 years between Rick's championship all the way to to what we see now when it comes to this Warriors dynasty of of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and even with KD in between. So of course with that Warriors team, they actually upset the Washington of course the Washington Bullets at that time, who were actually the heavy favorites, and the Warriors were were the underdog, and not only were they the underdog, but they swept them. That was the biggest surprise out of all of that. So of course Rick Barry was the star of that championship team in 1975, because of the fact that he was also of course he was also named the Finals MVP that season as well. And of course, sorry about that. Let me slow down. And of course, during his career, he was also an 8-time NBA All-Star, 66, 67, and of course, he took a break, from the NBA and then played in the ABA for a while, and then he came back and became All-Star once again between 73 to 78. He was also the NBA All-Star Game MVP in 1967. In that same season, he led the league in scoring. He led the league in. He led the league in scoring. Led the league in scoring that season with 35.6 points per game. And so, so of course with that, and of course he was also that season was also named to the All NBA first team, which he was a member of 5 times, a 5-time All NBA first team member, 66, 67, 74 through 76. And so, as far as the 1967 season, when Rick led the league in scoring at 35.6 points per game, he actually led the Warriors to the finals. And of course, they fell short against Wilt Chamberlain's Philadelphia 76ers team. So in that season, Wilt was actually the league MVP. But at the same time, in terms of Rick's importance to the Warriors, with the way that he carried that team, in an era long before they became known as the became known as the superstars and the dynasty that they are today. Like I say, Rick was certainly the figurehead at that time. And so, and not only that, like I said, not only was he an NBA All Star, but he was also an ABA champion in 1969. Of course, he was a 4-time ABA All Star from 69 to 72. He was also part of all ABA first team from 69 to 72 as well. And so, and the thing about Rick Barry was that I think it's because of the fact that, I think certain numbers of his, parts of his career somewhat is kind of skewed because of the time they took away from the ABA. Now it's not as extensive as when Dr. J was there, or whatever. But at the same time, I guess one can only wonder what if he never went to the ABA, how many more numbers he could have put up. But overall, his career didn't turn out too shabby, as far as his overall career, because he still finished off with over 25,000 points, like 25,279 or something. And so, so of course, obviously, he was not only named to the, not only named to the top 50 anniversary team, but also named to the top 75 anniversary team as well. You know what I mean? So, so of course, you cannot talk about the Warriors without mentioning Rick Barry. And so, of course, at number 8, this may be a bit controversial, for the tradition, for old school traditional Celtics fans. But I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Number 8 on this list, I have John Havlicek. It's fitting that he's number 8 because he's an 8-time, because he was an 8-time NBA champion. And slow down. So like I said, of course, like I said, Havlicek was 8-time NBA champion. So he was part of that Celtics era, dynasty with spearheaded by Bill Russell and Red Auerbach as the head coach. So so of course during his career he was 8-time NBA champion from 63 to 66. Then once again from 68 to 69, 74 and 76. He was a Finals MVP in 1974. 13-time All-Star from 66 to 78. 4-time All-NBA first team from 1971 to 74. 7-time All-NBA second team from 64, 66, 69 from 68 to 70, and then 75 and 76. And of course, he was a 5-time All-NBA defensive first team member from 72 to 76. And he was also named to all defensive second team from 69 to 71. Of course, once again, just like Rick Barry, Havlicek was named to top 50 and top 75 all-time teams. He's a Celtic, and of course, I want to say Paul Pierce. I want to say that Paul Pierce probably surpassed him all time when it comes to Celtics. No, actually not so much the Celtics points, but actually John Havlicek is a Celtics franchise leader in points with 26,395 points. So that's over a 16-year time span as far as career is concerned. So I think so for me, I think the reason why I don't have Havlicek higher is because of the fact that he never won a league MVP. Now, I'm not saying that that's like the ultimate criteria, but I think that MVP does carry a certain amount of weight, especially depending on what kind of player you are, what kind of season you had, your level of importance and things like that. So because of the fact that Havlicek played in the shadow of Bill Russell, you know what I mean? And of course, as far as that, and the thing is not only that, but even after Russell left, he still didn't even get an MVP. Even when he had Dave Cowens on the team. And of course, I'm not saying that Dave Cowens is a better player than Havlicek, whatever. But at the same time, because of the fact that he never won an MVP when Russell was there, even when he was the best player on the team. He still didn't win. Still didn't win a regular season MVP award, things like that. Some of the stuff that I kind of taking into consideration, and so and also because of the way that the game constantly evolves, and you just have guys who find a way to transcend their position more than he did. In the of course ever since his retirement, like I said, he had so many different players who play this position and just like I said, have transcended past him. That's the reason why. But at the same time, he's still top 10 small forward of all time, still top 75 player of all time. Like I said, of course, rest in peace. Of course, I certainly want to say rest in peace to Havlicek. So of course, with that being said, he's in my number 8. At number 7, this may be a bit controversial, but but at the same time, you know, you know, but like I said, at the same time, I still, I can still see this guy, still see this guy as my number 7 pick, and that goes to Kawhi Leonard. And so of course the accolades are this. Obviously, he's a two-time champion from 2014 with the Spurs, and also in 2019 with the Raptors. Of course, he's two-time Finals MVP from 2014 because of his defense against LeBron, and also in 2019 because of the way they carried that Toronto team, and just how important that was for him to bring a championship to a city that and really just a country overall that had never been an NBA champion. And so for him to do that just in that 1 year alone, like I said, that's like if nothing else, that's still something to a certain point that certainly carries weight on his resume. I would say that carries the most weight on his resume. So so with that being said, like I said, he's a two-time Finals MVP, he's a 5-time All-Star, 2016, 17, and then from 2019 through 21, through 2021. Of course, he was a 2020 NBA All-Star Game MVP, 3-time All-NBA First Team member from 2016, 2017, 2021, and of course, he was a part of the All-NBA Second Team in 2019 and 2020. He's also a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in 2015 and 16, which of course, which is fun, like I said, which is funny because he won the Defensive Player of the Year, but before he really started to find his groove and really take off as the player that we've known him to be since. But the thing about Kawhi is that his resume is pretty skewed, and once again, like I said, with Havlicek, because he had never won, excuse me, sorry about that. Like for me, because of the fact that he had never won an MVP before, and also because of the fact that he's missed so much time and so much momentum because of injuries. That's the reason why I can't really rank him much higher than where I have him right now. Of course, at number 6, I'm going to have to go with Kawhi's, let's say, generational predecessor, if you will. And this guy is a quintessential number 2 option, the sidekick when it comes to, of course, when it comes to NBA history. When you talk about NBA history, and you talk about the great, like I say, the greatest number 2 guys, like I say, you cannot tell a story of, like I said, of greatest wingman without this guy. Now, of course, recently he's been in his fair share of controversy, if you will, after the Last Dance and whatnot, everything like that. But that still does not erase the imprint that he's left on the game. With that being said, number 6 on this list goes to none other than Scottie Pippen. Jordan himself has even said on the Last Dance that he would not have the championships that he has had it not been for Scottie Pippen, had it not been for Pippen developing and maturing into the player that he became. And so with that, of course, with that being said, obviously, the Pippen's biggest claim to fame is that obviously he's a 6-time NBA champion, as we all know, from 91, 92, 93, and then once again from 96, 97, 98, from 91 through 93, the first three-peat, and then once again the second three-peat from 96 through 98. During that time span, he was also a 7-time All-Star from 90, and then he's like, sorry about that, like I say, he was a 7-time All-Star starting off in 90, and then picking up from 92 through 97. So so of course he's a 7-time All-Star. He was a 1994 All-Star Game MVP, 3-time All NBA First Team from 94 and 96, 2-time All NBA Second Team from 92 and 97, and also a 2-time All NBA Third Team member from 93 through 98. He was also 8-time All Defensive First Team member from 92 through 99 because of the fact that defense was his specialty. You know what I mean? Like I said, he would, like I said, when it came to defense, dude was an absolute magnet. He was absolutely incredible, phenomenal. You know what I mean? And the thing is, like I said, because of his defensive impact, because of how great he was on the end, and certainly he was an excellent overall two-way player. But of course, like I said, but the main thing that really made him stand out was the defense that he had. And I certainly believe that Pippen should have won at least one Defensive Player of the Year award. And so, and the thing about defense is that him and Jordan were neck and neck, side by side when it came to defense. And really, like I said, and just the impact that they had as a duo on defense, whether it was guarding Magic Johnson, Tony Kukoc, Drexler, what I mean, like with the way that they had their rotations. Like I said, that like I said, it was absolutely special. It was very significant, and like I said, of course, with that being said, and also another thing I meant to add was that Pippen has also led the league in steals as well. He's also part of the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams as well. He's also a two-time Olympic gold winner in '92 and '96, two of the greatest Olympic teams of all time, and he was part of history twice. So Pippen's number 6. And now it's time to go into my top 5. And at number 5, let me slow down. And of course, at number 5, I have to go with somebody who is a pioneer. This guy. This was DC's first NBA superstar, if you will. Guy that came, of course, for those that are from the DC area, he came out of Spingarn High School. You know what I mean. And so, and if anything, if anything, let me slow down. I'll say it like this: in the post George Mikan era, this guy was the Lakers' first sort of superstar before Jerry West. Like I said, pretty much. I'll say it like this: when it came to that sort of like that transition from the Minneapolis Lakers to the Los Angeles Lakers, he was the superstar that they needed at that time. Obviously, before excuse me, sorry about that. Let me slow down. Obviously, before somebody like Jerry West came in, and and really took over and became who he became, or whatever. But at the same time, this guy was certainly a great dynamic duo with West during those Lakers teams in the '60s that constantly went to the finals, only to come up short so many times because Bill Russell basically had the NBA's version of the Infinity Gauntlet, pretty much 2 gloves, if you will, 11-time champion. So unfortunately, those Lakers teams were constantly a notch on the belt of those Celtics. But this guy, like I said, that there's no mistake about at all about the imprint that he left on the game as far as the influence. This guy was, let's say he was NBA's first true like high flyer. This is somebody who predates the likes of Connie Hawkins, Julius Erving, Michael Jordan, Kobe, so on and so forth. This is somebody who, who's the first one who really truly defied gravity, if you will. And like I said, the things that he did at that time were very innovative. Like I said, that they were like I said, there were certainly things that had never been seen before at that time in the late 50s, going to like the early 60s. And and of course, I'm talking about none other. I constantly have to give him his props and his respect. None other than the late, great Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor was an 11-time All-Star from 59 to 65, and then once again from 67 through 70. He was, of course, he was the 1959 All-Star Game MVP, and as a rookie, he carried the Minneapolis Lakers to the NBA Finals, only once, obviously, to fall short against Russell Celtics. And so of course, with that being said, he was also a 10-time All NBA first team selection from 59 to 65, and then once again from 67 to 69. He was also the Rookie of the Year in 1959. He's part of the NBA anniversary teams, the 35th anniversary team, 50th anniversary team, and 75th anniversary team. And so, and also, like, sorry, let me slow down. Here's another little fun fact, sort of interesting fact about Elgin Baylor. In the 1962 season, Elgin Baylor only played 48 games because he was stationed in the military, in the Air Force, so he had to go back and forth from LA to Seattle. But even though he missed that much game time, he still found a way to average like 38.3
points per game, like 18.6 rebounds per game, and 4.6 assists per game. So for him to have a season cut short because of military time, because let's face it, at that time, you know, like, stop with that. Of course, let's face it, at that time, players weren't making nowhere close to the kind of money that they're making now. And at that time, a lot of players had to take other jobs. And so in Elgin's case, he was drafted into the military, and so because of that, his time was cut short to 48 games. But for him to put up 38, 19, and 5 in that season, and sorry about that. For him to put up 38, 19, and 5 in that season, and to be among the top 5 in the MVP voting speaks volumes. And and of course, another thing is it's just amazing to see what kind of rebounding numbers this guy put up. For a guy who was 6'5", for his career, he averaged 13.5 rebounds per game. Obviously, go along with the 27.4 points per game. And so like so of course, with that being said, because of his contributions, because of his influence, or, like I said, because of his contributions, you know, because of his influence, even though like I said, even though he was a casualty of that Celtics era, of that dynasty, I'm gonna keep having to repeat it over and over, but at the same time, you can make a strong case that Elgin Baylor is probably the greatest player to never win a championship. Sorry about that. I guess I had to sort of clear my throat a little bit. But yeah, like I said, for me, when we talk about the greatest small forwards of all time, hands down, Elgin Baylor has the resume. He had the game. He had the legacy overall to still, for his career, to still stand the test of time among, among the greatest greatest small forwards of all time. To still have that, sort of the ironclad top 5 standings when it comes to his position. And he was certainly one of the top players of the generation that he came from at that time. So because of that, Elgin Baylor is at number 5 on my greatest small forwards list. At number 4, of course, sorry about that. At number 4, for me, is the guy sorry about that. At number 4 is the guy that obviously was Elgin's ultimate, say, generational successor. What Elgin Baylor did meant to the '60s, this guy meant to the '70s, especially when it came to small forwards. And I'll say it like this: when it comes to this guy's career, certain things about it are somewhat skewed because of the fact that you could say that he spent the peak of his career, his heyday, in another league, and one can only imagine how much more this guy could have done. He never spent the first 5 years, the first 5 years of his career in the ABA. One can only imagine what else he could have done had he not spent a third of his career in a rival promotion. But at the same time, because of this guy, not rival promotion, but rival league, excuse me. But because of this guy, because of what he did for this particular league, like I said, I'll say that because of the fact that because he was the face of this rival league, he was responsible for the merger that the NBA had with the ABA. Had it not been for this guy, we would not have the dunk contest. Had it not been for what the ABA, did, like I said, had it not been for him, let me start out. Had it not been for him, we would, like I said before, we would not have the dunk contest. We would not have we would not even have the red, white, and blue ball that that they would later on use. That they would later on use for the 3-point contest and all these other things. Had this guy not carried this league the way that he did, you know, um, there are a lot of things that would be vastly different. But even with that being said, even the thing is, even after he dominated the ABA, he still found a way to become a star of his own in the NBA, where where he was All Star every single season, and this guy was an All Star every season of his career, all 16 seasons combined. And and of course, as I've said before, because the fact that Elgin Baylor was his direct successor, this guy was the bridge, the generational successor to to one Michael Jordan. And of course, without further ado, I'm going to say it's none other than Julius Dr. J. Erving. When you put Dr. J's numbers all together, like when you combine his ABA and NBA statistics, he actually has 30,026 points per game, with an average of 24.2 points per game. Over 10,000 rebounds, by the way, 10,525, like 6.5 rebounds per game, whatever. 5,176 assists, 4.2 assists per game. So so of course, combined all together, he was a 16-time All-Star. Like I said, as I've said before, when you put everything together, he's a 16-time All-Star, 5-time ABA All-Star, 11-time NBA All-Star. Of course, he was a 1983 NBA champion. Of course, with the Philadelphia 76ers, he spent all 11 years with the 76ers. Like I said, he's a 1983 NBA champion with the 76ers. He was a 2-time ABA champion in 1974 and 76 with the New York Nets, as we all know now as the Brooklyn Nets, also formerly New Jersey Nets. So like I say, he was a 2-time ABA champion with the Nets in 74 and 76. He was a 2-time what they call ABA playoffs MVP, playoffs MVP from 1974 to 76. He was an NBA MVP in 1981. He was a 3-time ABA MVP, 3 straight ABA MVP awards from 74 through 76, 5-time ABA All-Star from 72 to 76, 2-time NBA All-Star Game MVP in 77, 83, 5-time All-NBA First Team from 78, 80 through 83, and so like I said, and also he was a 3-time ABA scoring champion from 73, 74, 76. Of course, he's the first slam dunk champion in history. We were as ABA slam dunk champion in 1976. And of course, his number 32 was retired by the Nets. Number 6 was retired by the 76ers. Of course, he was part of the NBA's 35th, 50th, and of course 75th anniversary teams. So, like I said, like I said, because of like I said, because Dr. J's impact was more recent than Elgin Baylor, and of course, and the thing is, like I said, when you weigh all of his accolades all together, there's like I said, for me, you have no other choice but to put him in the, let's say, I'll call the Mount Rushmore of greatest small forwards of all time. And there was there was a span of time, of course, back in the 70s, where you could say he was the greatest small forward of all time. And he was certainly, I'll say it like this: even though Kareem was the greatest player of the 70s, Dr. J was the most popular player of the 70s. He was the more marketable player of the 70s. And at a time like that, you needed somebody like Dr. J to at least at that time, at least at best, give the NBA some type of life support, some type of CPR. Like I said, let me slow down. At a time like that, you certainly need someone like Dr. J to if nothing else, at least give CPR, life support to the NBA. Of course, before the 80s came along, and of course we had guys like Magic and Bird, come in and obviously come in and save the league, and then later on you have Jordan follow them and take it to the highest heights. But at the same time, all that was great, but at the same time, Dr. J was the one that really sort of like sort of got the ball rolling, and of course in that aspect. So with that being said, Dr. J for me is number 4 when it comes to the greatest small forwards of all time. Number 3 on this list, another DC DMV legend. If anything, to me, This guy certainly surpassed Elgin Baylor as as the greatest DC or DMV player of all time. Seat Pleasant Zone. Let's just say right now he's in a he's sort of a polarizing, controversial figure at this point. In large part because of the way that he left his very first team, and how all that stuff went down. But at the same time, there's no way that you can erase his accomplishments. There's no way that you can erase what he means to the game, today and even in history. And of course, the guy that I'm talking about is none other than KD himself, Kevin Durant. This guy's virtually a 7-foot guard, just about. You know what I mean? Like the way that he scores effortlessly, pretty much. You know what I mean? I'll say it like this: he's almost like the basketball version of Skeletor meets Jack Skellington from the Nightmare Before Christmas, just because of how long his arms are. And just because of his reach, and just because of how versatile he is, how versatile this guy is when it comes to scoring, just how ruthless he is when it comes to scoring. You know what I mean? And of course over time, he's of course over time he improved his defense. You know what I mean? And so like it pretty much like with Kevin Durant. What else can I really say? Obviously, of course, let me slow down. Obviously, he was the Seattle SuperSonics' very last pick as the first overall pick in the I mean, not the first overall, but the second overall pick in the 2007 NBA draft. Of course, unfortunately, unfortunately, the Blazers, sorry about that. Of course, unfortunately, the Blazers, kicked themselves in the foot. Kick themselves in the foot, but shot themselves in the foot by drafting Greg Oden ahead of KD, as the first overall pick. So it was the closest thing that we had to the 1984 draft when the Blazers picked Sam Bowie over Jordan, and of course, ever since then, the Blazers have lived to regret that decision. You know what I mean? So so of course, I say like this: Kevin Durant's accolades read as this. Obviously, he's a two-time NBA champion with the Golden State Warriors from 2017 and 2018, along with being a two-time Finals MVP from 2017 and 18 with that same Warriors team. Let's say, like I said, there's a lot of controversy surrounding that as well. But at the same time, like I said, history speaks for itself. He's an all-time great, regardless. In 2014, he was the NBA Most Valuable Player, 12-time All-Star from 2010 to 2019. Obviously, he missed the 2020 season because of injury, so he came back in 2021, 2022. Two-time All-Star Game MVP from 2012 to 2019. Six-time All-NBA First Team selection from 2010 through 2014, and then once again in 2018 with the Warriors. Four-time All-NBA Second Team selection in 2016, 2017, 2019, and then this year in 2022. Rookie of the Year in 2008. All rookie first team in 2008. Four-time scoring champion from 2010 through 2012, and once again in 2014. He's also in 2013. He's also a member of the NBA's 50, 40, and 90 club. And of course, this means that you shoot 50% from the floor, 40% from 3-point range, and 90% from the free throw line. And of course, recently he's been named to the NBA's 75th anniversary team, which he certainly deserves. And over the course of his 14 slash, over the course of, let's say, his 14 slash 15-year career, of course, like sorry about that. Like I said, over the course of his 14 slash 15-year career, including that season-ending injury from that season sideline injury from 2020. Like I said, overall, when you put everything together, Kevin Durant has scored over 25,000 career points, and of course, he's a three-time gold medal winner from 2012 in London, in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro, and 2020 in Tokyo. And so, I'll say actually more like 2021 in Tokyo. Obviously, we all know because of the pandemic, but of course, like I said, with that being said, sorry about that. With that being said, once again, there's no denying, what Kevin Durant has done and what he's still doing. Like I said, regardless of the controversy. And I'll say it like this: for all the criticism that he gets for making his decision, I say it like this: had he not, had he never gone to a championship team, at least had he finished his career without a championship, he still get a criticism. So it's just like, what else can you really do? And of course, number two, obviously, is none other the Celtics icon, 80s basketball icon, the Hick from French Lick, the Hick from French Lick himself, Larry Legend, Larry Bird. And his accomplishments, speak for themselves. 3-time NBA champion, 2-time Finals MVP. Of course, he's a 3-time NBA MVP. He's the last player to win 3 straight MVP awards. The other 2 before him were Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain. So Bird is the last player to ever win 3 straight league MVPs. 12-time All-Star. Of course, he's a 12-time All-Star. He's made multiple All NBA first teams, as well as of course, he was also he's also All-Star game MVP in 1982, and he also won the three-point contest 3 straight years from 86 through 88. And so, like I said, what else can you say about Larry Bird that hasn't been said already? He's like, when it comes to trash talk, when it comes to clutch play, when it comes to, like I said, just when it comes to dominance, when it comes to just legacy, you cannot tell the NBA story without Larry Bird. And if anything, his resume speaks for itself. And no matter what, he's a universal top 10 NBA player of all time. This guy came up big at in the toughest moments on the brightest stage of them all in the NBA Finals, and he was Magic Johnson's greatest dance partner in the 80s. Both him and Magic elevated the NBA to its greatest heights, obviously before Jordan. And the thing is, without Larry Bird, like I said, of course, without Larry Bird and without Magic Johnson, the NBA would have died a long time ago. So, because of his importance, regardless of his individual stats, but like I said, just when it comes to legacy, when it comes to imprint, when it comes to his body of work, there's no question about it. Larry Bird is still the number 2 small forward of all time. For a long time, he was number 1. But like I said, for a long time, Bird was number 1. But now, I would say ever since 2016, this guy has taken his place. And for a long time, this guy is going to be on the throne when it comes to the greatest small forwards. And speaking of throne, is none other than King James himself, LeBron James. And LeBron's resume speaks for itself. Obviously, he's a 4-time NBA champion from 2012, 13, 2016, 2020. 4-time Finals MVP also within those same years. 4-time MVP from 2009. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. He's a 4-time MVP, and each of those MVPs were back to back in 2009, 2010, and then of course with Cleveland, and then once again in 2012 and 2013 with the Miami Heat. He's an 18-time NBA All-Star from 2005 all the way to now in 2022. So 18 consecutive All-Star games. 3-time All-Star Game MVP 2006, 2008, and 2018. 13-time All-NBA first-team selection in 2006, 2008 through 2018, and once again 2020. 3-time All-NBA second-team selection in 2005, 2007, and 2021. And of course, the two-time All-NBA third-team selection in 2019 and 2022. You know what I mean? And like I said, what else can you say about LeBron that hasn't been said already? He's also NBA scoring champion in 2008. He also led the league in assists in 2020. You know what I mean? He's also a 3-time Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year in 2012, 2016, and 2020. And of course, he's a 2-time gold medalist in 2008, 2012. And like I said, when it comes to superstar status, when it comes to just being an icon, just being an ambassador for the game, LeBron
is, like I said, is second to none when it comes to this era, when it comes to his generation. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to that 20, when it comes to that 2010s, excuse me, when it comes to the 2010s era, it's LeBron James and everybody else. It's hands down. And for me, what made him the great small forward of all time was after he won the championship in Cleveland, coming back from that 3-1 deficit against Golden State, and for a city that never, for a city that never won an NBA championship, they were always the stepping stone, always the notch on Jordan's belt. For LeBron to to do what he did and make that return and bring that championship. Something like that. Jimmy, like I said, for LeBron to do what he did and win that championship the way he did, that one championship in Cleveland is worth 12 or 15 championships anywhere else. So with that being said, LeBron has been solidified, certified as the greatest small forward of all time. Nothing else needs to be said. And of course, this concludes the greatest small forwards list. And of course, I'm gonna pick back up the greatest power forwards list. Thank you very much for watching. And thank you very much. And thank you very much for tuning in.